When when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind Around with John Pollock and Wai Ting. The A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind Around for Monday night. Download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind Around for Monday night on USA. Now on the John and Wai take the mic.
It's Rewind Raw. I am John Pollock alongside Wai Ting here on a Monday evening. Hello, Wai. Happy Monday.
Yeah, Easter Monday, right?
It is Easter Monday, correct. Is this a holiday?
I think for some people, I guess
some get it.
Yeah,
Most.
I'm not really sure. I know Friday was.
Everything seemed open today.
Huh. Yeah.
Most people I know work today.
Easter Sunday. I guess Easter Sunday was the actual holiday.
Yeah, but this is it extends into Easter Monday, so you know how these holidays work. This
Not
whole
really, actually.
well, I mean, it was a really busy weekend for Jesus. I mean, Good Friday to Easter Monday was a pretty significant number of days that he had over those four. So
Okay.
culminates in the resurrection. Well, we are here not to talk about biblical stories, but instead to chat all the latest news. We're also going to talk about Raw tonight, which was a mess with people missing shows, travel issues, and thus we had 6 matches over 3 hours and a lot of this felt like one of those COVID era Raws where you're trying to figure out who's not on the show, and it seemed that quite a few are. And when you were watching Sami Zayn and Matt Riddle run into the building, well, I don't think that was probably exactly how it went, like probably not too far off where they were hoping some of these talents would get there in time because of course Riddle's match with Miz was scrapped. It just sounded like it was a nightmare today for them to put this show together.
Yeah, seems like it. And I guess you can look at it two ways. Like on the one hand, if you're just watching a show for entertainment, it definitely negatively impacted the show. But I'm very curious about the behind the scenes and inner workings of how they even managed to pull something like this together.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a very chaotic day where there had to be a lot of flexibility among everyone involved. And I mean, the fact that they got the show out there, and we don't have like a confirmed list of who exactly was impacted, but you would certainly look at the prominent names that were absent from this show and kind of assume that, like, no Bianca Belair, no Seth Rollins. We mentioned the Miz, Riddle and Zayn, who they outright stated were two of the people affected, but did get there by the show's end. So, they were not just down numbers, but also some significant figures as well when you're talking about some of those ones that we just listed.
Right. Yeah. And maybe in the days ahead, we'll learn exactly what those names are. But I guess this can happen, when you're a traveling show and it really, if it's not maybe illness, travel's difficult.
That's why we don't travel. We not just stay put. We just stay. Can't mess up going downstairs. We might mess up trying to go up many, many stairs this coming Sunday, but downstairs, we got that part down. You've been training?
Barely. WrestleMania week has really kind of screwed me up, so I'm really just kind of picking things back up over the past weekend. But yeah, John and I are going to be doing a CN Tower climb for the WWF. We've joined the WWF, the World Wildlife Fund. That's taking place this Sunday, and it's you, me, Braden, and Davey as well as some of my friends. So I'm really looking forward to it, actually.
Yeah, maybe we're all, the four of us are just going to take a pact that whatever happens on the CN Tower climb, we will never speak of it.
Braden and Davey invited us to record Poison Rana right afterwards, actually.
Not a chance. No, you can go do that. I'm going to be done after
They'll
this.
probably be live tweeting it or live Instagram storying the whole thing.
I don't think I've ever had a conversation with Braden where I don't end up hearing about it or reading about it afterwards. I have to always be of the impression that whenever I'm talking to the guy, this is for public consumption. That's how I always go into every conversation with Braden.
Tends to be what happens when your friends all have podcasts.
Well, let's get into tonight's news. There's a lot here, so I'm just moving forward. We have a new IWGP champion, SANADA. They look at this man. Look at this gorgeous man that has got the look at this. Minoru Suzuki circa 1988 here. Just brand new look, brand new tights, brand new championship. Unseating Kazuchika Okada. I wouldn't go as to say the best match that I've seen Okada and SANADA have. They had that super dramatic one where SANADA beat him in 2019. But in terms of the drama of this one, and I did know the result watching it, so I was watching it with that knowledge. This was a crowd that they wanted to see SANADA prevail, and they picked their favorite in SANADA, and then he delivers and gets this win. And as we had stated in the lead up, like this was a feasible outcome given all of the changes to SANADA's character. If you were ever going to do it, now is the time, not just for the reasons of SANADA, but also politically, it opens up Okada for a lot of interesting matches going into Forbidden Door, for the Wembley Stadium show, for G1 for that matter. Out the title, a lot more interesting things you can do with Okada. So it remains to be seen, but it's SANADA winning and certainly catching some people off guard, which sometimes you want to have that kind of impact with a result.
Yeah. I would say in terms of like season, it's a pretty low stakes season, where you can experiment, if you want to call it that, I wouldn't really call it even so much an experiment. I think what you're getting with SANADA. He's a very capable in-ring performer. And maybe because he's been in LIJ as a silent guy for so long, maybe that aura of like being a main eventer has somewhat dissipated over the years. So this fresh coat of paint as part of Just Five Guys, I think, is really the perfect opportunity to give him that extra shove to really be perceived now from this point on as somebody who could potentially headline a show. And let's hope this experiment goes a bit better than the evil experiment not that long ago.
Yeah, we've also got Taichi that's going to be going for the King of Pro Wrestling title. Kanemaru is going to challenge Hiromu for the junior heavyweight title. So could we, by the end of this whole stretch, could we have just 3 champions and 2 guys, with all due respect to Doki and Taka?
I mean, they could go for, I'm sure, I don't know, the junior heavyweight.
Doki could maybe
tags.
Maybe Doki and Taka go for the junior heavyweight tag scraps or something like that. We could get just 5 champions. This is possible.
Yeah,
we'll get into all the match announcements, but just how much of Sakura Genesis did you get to see? Because this show, I got up on Saturday morning and I started from the title matches and I watched those 5 title matches. I was blown away by this show by the end. Like, I thought this was one of the better shows of the year. I really enjoyed the women's 3-way. I think, I've seen criticism of the match, but I thought, yes, Mercedes Moné, I would state, like, it's still a learning curve for her to be working with the speed of an Azumi, not to mention Hazuki as well. But I thought for a 3-way match, which is not always my favorite types of matches, I thought there was so much creativity in this match, and it was a nonstop pace for the 14 minutes or so that this one lasted. And then you extend that to Zack Sabre Jr. and Shota Umino that had an awesome match with the 15-minute time limit, and Zack pulling it out with about 23 seconds left. Aussie Open and Bishamon having the match of the show, in my opinion, which is a really scary spot. We're not all that different from the Finn Balor deal, but instead of a ladder, it was Kyle Fletcher doing a moonsault to the floor and bashing his head into the guardrail, and they had to tape him up and continued, and it added to the drama of the match. But this was a nasty, nasty shot that he took with his head going into the metal barricade.
Yeah. To me, so I had a sense of a big title change taking place before I started watching the show, and even beyond that, I think for me as a North American fan, just a Mercedes Moné wrestling in Japan probably held my most of my interest. So I was going into the show specifically wanting to watch both those things. As I was scrubbing through, I see Kyle Fletcher basically like wrestle with this like bandage around his head, and I'm like, well, look, how the guy doesn't just come into a match with like a bandage. So like, what exactly happened here? I scrubbed back to the beginning of the match, and holy shit, like that this ended up being like, I'm sure one of the pivotal moments of the team's career. It's never fortunate to have an injury, but if you're going to have an injury like that, not such a bad place to do it in a championship match where you're supposed to go over and win the tag team championships. This was a performance of a lifetime, by Kyle Fletcher, and completely use that blood at, to all its advantage. It was very dramatic.
Yeah. I mean, and this was early in the match. He did not seem to have any ill effects in the match. Like, obviously, you're worried about a potential head injury, but nonetheless, yeah, this is a shot of it all. I would really state that it might be an idea that we've had so many guardrail instances with New Japan in particular, where it's bashing guys. They utilize the guardrail so much that the WWE barricades that they have. I mean, they upgraded those like years and years ago, and these metal barricades, like you had the incident with Jay White and Jim Ross. You've had when the guardrails are not fully secure. You've had fans knocked down from them and such. I mean, maybe this is like, to me, this is not just an isolated incident, but it's also one where it's, you're talking about metal. You don't always have the biggest amount of room to be dealing with here, to just have a better secure barricade or around these floors, where I think you minimize a lot of these problems.
I can't profess to know enough about,
would you rather have your head go into this metal fence, or would you rather have it like the barricades that WWE have? I would definitely take the WWE ones if I'm bashing my head into something.
I suppose I don't know what the costs are of, a WWE style barricades, and if they were maybe accessible to everybody, why wouldn't every single company already have them? And not saying New Japan, can't afford maybe an upgrade, but I considering the amount of dives, is it worth the investment? These aren't questions really for me. So,
well, I'll decide. I'm answering the question for all the problems of these barricades. But and then Hiromu retained against Robbie Eagles, and then SANADA winning the IWGP title. But I thought this was honestly one of the better shows of the year. This one to me was an excellent New Japan show. The crowd, it was a little over 6,000, so they're still trying to build up. Like, this is not, by the previous standards, a great number for Sumo Hall, but they're slowly building things back up. And this was an excellent show, and the crowd heat was certainly evident on this show.
A lot of significant events and a lot of big names here. I think having a Mercedes Moné on this type of show is bound to draw a lot of new eyeballs to a New Japan World. And this is also the time when you might want to execute and really build your new stars, whether it be an Aussie Open or a SANADA. So a lot of great reviews coming out of this one. And let's see if it pays off for their next shows.
Yeah, at the end of the night, you had SANADA saying, finally, I'm in the position to tell Okada, let's do it again. So the idea of doing a rematch between those two down the road. And then Hiromu came out to confront his former LIJ stablemate, and he issued the challenge to SANADA. But first, Yoshinobu Kanemaru wants a shot at Hiromu's junior heavyweight title. So they are going to do Hiromu and Kanemaru on April 27th at the Road to Dontaku event. And then Hiromu will challenge SANADA at Wrestling Dontaku, which is, this is a very, I don't even want to say like risky move. I think they're at a point now where they can take these kinds of chances, but they're not chances that New Japan often does take. They're running Fukuoka. This is a major arena, and they're going with a brand new champion in SANADA and your junior heavyweight champion. So this is kind of like your anniversary deal that they used to do, but that was a much smaller undertaking at Ota Ward Gymnasium.
I like it a lot. There's a lot of obviously storyline history between I guess one former LIJ member and Hiromu Takahashi, who I think is a big enough star that can headline the show with enough interest. And it's a winnable match for SANADA without affecting really the value of, a junior heavyweight champion.
And gives you the opportunity to have Okada at the end, and maybe SANADA and Okada, that's what you're looking for Dominion, potentially as the rematch, which is their big card in June.
You think they'll have SANADA win again?
Against Hiromu?
Yes. No, against Okada.
Oh, against Okada. Yeah, I would have SANADA. I hate when a guy wins the title and it's taken off of him so quickly. Yeah. Give him a real run.
I think a better question, how long do you think SANADA would keep the championship? Would he keep it all the way till Wrestle Kingdom?
Typically, when New Japan makes these moves, it is because they have a long-term picture set up. I would certainly look at SANADA as a test case. This is not someone that I think is going to necessarily be a slam dunk as your champion. I would say if he makes it to Wrestle Kingdom, you look at this as a successful reign, that he has kept it that long. Is it possible? Yes. I could also see if he does not catch fire, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. There is a bit of a honeymoon period. It's a fresh face holding this championship, but it will be you have your solid core, and hopefully by the end of G1, SANADA is clearly entrenched into that solid upper 3 to 4 guys. Pardon the obvious pun there.
Just 3 or 4 guys, yeah. Want to draw people's attention to Karen Peterson and Bruce Lord, who delivered a really wonderful review of Sakura Genesis over at postwrestlingcafe.com on our Patreon feed. So go and check that out. Karen also has a written report up at postwrestling.com right now. So if you want to learn a bit more information about her thoughts, their thoughts on the show, check those out.
Yeah, great rundown of the show from Bruce and Karen on the Post Wrestling Cafe. So let's go in order here of some of the major matches. We won't go through all of these cards that New Japan has announced, but they have got a lot of cards coming up. So Road to Dontaku, the highlight show will be April the 27th in Hiroshima with Hiromu and Yoshinobu Kanemaru. It will also feature TJP and Francesco Akira defending the junior heavyweight tag titles against Kushida and Kevin Knight. Tetsuya Naito against Doki. The singles match nobody was anticipating this year, which was set up at Sakura Genesis. And they will also announce the participants for the Best of the Super Juniors tournament that starts in May. Then 2 days later in Kagoshima, it will be Shingo against Taichi for the King of Pro Wrestling Championship. And Shingo is coming off this unbelievable match with Aaron Hanare last week. I just watched this last night. This was incredible. 38 minutes of the ultimate triad match where you had to finish your opponent with a pinfall, a submission, and then a 10 count. So it sounds convoluted, but this was the best match of Aaron Hanare's career. So, suddenly this King of Pro Wrestling title, Shingo, I think, has elevated this title quite a bit. And I have no doubt that him and Taichi will probably have a pretty terrific main event at the end of the month. And that April 29th show also featuring Aussie Open defending the tag titles for the first time against Mikey Nichols and Shane Haste. But this all leads to Wrestling Dontaku on May 3rd, and the top matches, as we mentioned, SANADA and Hiromu, Tama Tonga against David Finlay, Minoru Suzuki, El Desperado, and Ren Narita defending the 6-man tag titles against Kazuchika Okada and two partners that Okada will add that are just unknown at this point. Then we have Zack Sabre Jr. and Jeff Cobb, which if Zack Sabre Jr. defends the TV title, will be defended against Cobb, and Kenta with the strong openweight title against Hikuleo. And then we have a bunch of multi-man tags. So a lot of cards coming up from New Japan. But the biggest, of course, are this summer with the G1 Climax that they announced the dates over the weekend at Sakura Genesis. 19 shows. And the biggest question is, what do you think of the beach motif for this year's G1 Climax?
Well, it's certainly summery.
They got the memo of the season that they are attracting people towards.
Hey, listen, man, after 32 of these things, it's a little bit difficult to, come up with something fresh every single year. I mean, really, what can you do?
I'm fine with this. It looks, it looks like a summer.
Will there be sand on at every single stage?
Yeah, they should get like the Beach Blast, Bash at the Beach set, and just have that every night at all these arenas. So it will start July 15th and 16th in Hokkaido. Some of the highlights include back-to-back nights at Korakuen Hall, back-to-back nights at Ideon Arena in Osaka, and then they have announced the semifinals and finals August 12th and 13th at Sumo Hall. So not going any bigger than Sumo Hall. They are just trying so hard to get WH Park back to Japan to come to the finals in the sweltering heat that is Sumo Hall in the middle of August. 19 shows over that month way.
That's kind of typical, isn't it?
Yes. And
do you think they'll be doing the 4?
Well, the fact that they are not stating like A block, B block finals, they're saying semifinals and finals. It tells me they're probably doing the 4 blocks again, like they did last year, which I wasn't as big a fan of as the 2 block system from before. But it also does limit the amount of matches that these guys have to have. But I do hope it's a better balancing act. As we went through last year's tournament, there would be, just based on the scheduling, guy would have a match and then maybe it's 10 days before you see him again. And that it definitely affected the flow that you have in previous ones, but it's a very tough tournament for these guys as well. So I'm not going to belabor the fact that they get more days off in between some of their big matches. So there you have it, Wai. A lot of New Japan coming up. as well. Finally, New Japan, Noah, and All Japan also will be making some kind of an announcement Wednesday morning. They all put out this cryptic video that this news will be coming up on Wednesday. So I guess speculation about some kind of big show involving these three companies. Imagine if they were all coming together for one streaming service that would only cost you one subscription fee a month. Could you imagine, Way?
It sounds like a political nightmare to try to
Not a
navigate.
chance. Yeah, not happening. But you could only hope. Consolidation of some of these. As I'm going through my streaming bills, I would love some consolidation on that front. Don't think that's happening.
But most likely Tokyo Dome show, I think, has maybe been somewhat tradition in the past.
Possible, yes.
Yeah.
Something in the summer, maybe before G1, you get something big in there. There's a lot of big stuff coming up when you can, especially with New Japan, from you do best of the Super Juniors when your heavyweights are kind of idle, that you could do something during that month. But then you have Forbidden Door at the end of June. You get right into G1. And then at the end of August, I would think you expect a New Japan presence on this Wembley Stadium show.
Sure. I'm also curious if if this furthers any sort of working relationship and we see talent exchanges for things like the G1 and the N1, like do they, that would certainly, I think, help everybody.
That would be great news. I think it's very possible you could get like one or two outsiders into the G1 this year. Like you would think maybe one person from AEW, one from Noah, one from an All Japan. Like that would be great. You don't need a surge of people, just like one or two. And I think it really spices up some of the blocks. And there was also this tournament that they are doing to determine who will face Kenny Omega for the United States Championship. So this weekend, New Japan Strong is in Philadelphia and Washington. Sunday show in Philadelphia will feature Lance Archer against Juice Robinson. And then on May 21st, Will Ospreay takes on Hiroshi Tanahashi. So that is the first match that Ospreay has scheduled back since his shoulder injury. And then the two winners will face at Dominion on June the 4th. And the winner of that will challenge Kenny Omega, date to be determined, but would seem to lead to Forbidden Door. And whether you are going big with Omega and Ospreay for Forbidden Door, whether you do a rematch with Omega and Tanahashi. As for the other two, I don't see Lance Archer or Juice Robinson coming out of this unless it were to build up like a television match, which this seems a lot of time to build up a television match.
Yeah. I mean, both of these are on the left side of the bracket, at least AEW guys. So you wonder how much promotion there might be for this particular mini tournament on AEW TV. I think everybody is hoping for Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega at Forbidden Door, and I don't know if there are any other favorites. Tanahashi is always a nice replacement, but maybe that's why he's only here, in case Will Ospreay can't make it and we have to get to Tanahashi. What is the latest injury health update with Will Ospreay?
I mean, Ospreay has just stated like he's been making progress, but this is the most significant announcement is May 21st. He feels that he will be good to go here for a match with Tanahashi, which, to be quite honest, for Ospreay and Tanahashi, this will be in Long Beach, California. It'll be a pretty easy crowd. And to come back, like I don't want to say it's easy to do a match with Tanahashi, but it is one that these two, Ospreay does not have to go all out for a match with Tanahashi for them to tear the house down, doing a lot of simple stuff. And Tanahashi has mastered the super simple Tanahashi match for most effectiveness. And he can dial it up to what he needs to, but they can have a fantastic match without Ospreay having to do what will be required for a Kenny Omega match.
Right. Though something tells me you'll probably still see like a Will Ospreay match.
Well, we will see. We will see what comes back with this the shoulder injury and what he takes away from it. Logan Paul has signed a new deal with WWE. So he had gone into WrestleMania stating that was the last match on his deal. And in going back to look at the announcement from last June, the language was he had signed a multi-event deal with WWE. So okay. I think that's where some of the confusion was. But this was identified by WWE as a multi-year deal for Logan Paul. So he just turned 28 years old. And I guess the only question is if this continues the schedule of a Logan Paul, and would you restrict him to big shows? Do you see them turning it up and more of a presence of Logan Paul month to month, or do you like what they're doing with him now?
I guess depends on how much they can get him. I'm sure he's the type of person that they would love to have out every single Raw if they really wanted to. But I mean, how much is he willing to offer of his own time? With his other projects on the go. So I would say that they would take as much of Logan Paul as they could.
Yeah, got the Prime Energy drink into his photo op with Paul Levesque.
Yeah, do you find out about what do you think about this, John? This very, very blatant Photoshop. What do you think of it?
He's denying that this is a Photoshop. He states
please.
It's a new photo.
Yes, of course. They just perfectly match their posing.
Oh man,
I think it's a pretty great Photoshop. I mean, whoever managed to cut Stephanie out like that, replace the background.
That's cold.
Change the colors. I mean, come on. She's not there.
I guess not. No. Yeah. Well, that is pretty great seeing them side by side there.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
Yeah,
did you see that Logan Paul was at UFC 287 over the weekend?
I did not. No. A lot of people were at UFC 287.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was the GOP National Party at Cage Side. You had Donald Trump, Donald Jr., Kid Rock. The week this guy is like arraigned in court, and here he is at the UFC event. But man, pick the state, and quite honestly, pick the sport that is most likely to wrap their arms around a Donald Trump. So yes, he was there at UFC. SmackDown on Friday night did 2,468,000 viewers, 0.69 in the demo, each up 4% from the week prior. This being the post-WrestleMania edition. And yes, big announcements draw away. Paul Levesque, he had words to state into a microphone, coming days off of Tony Khan, having words to deliver into a microphone. And this was SmackDown's highest viewership since January, and their highest 18-49 number since that famous Christmas Day episode of SmackDown after the NFL in 2020. So if you throw that out, this was their highest 18-49 number since March of 2020 that they did. Huge 18-34 number for WWE as well. They did over 254,000 viewers in Canada. So people were very much interested in what Paul Levesque had to say. Sami Zayn against Jey Uso and the fallout from WrestleMania that I guess you can look at. Number one show on television Friday.
It's impressive. Yeah.
I will say what was also impressive was this 2-hour block that AEW did immediately following SmackDown. So breaking them up, the first hour, which was Rampage, did 503,000 viewers and a 0.17 in the demo. Sixth for the night among cable originals. This was up 48% in viewers from last week, and it was up 76% in the demo from the week prior. It was their biggest audience for Rampage since January 13th. And for the key demo, it wasn't as high as the show that aired at midnight that had the huge NCAA lead-in. But if you throw out that week, it was their highest since December 23rd. So that was with Anna Jay and Julia Hart in the main event. You can look at this lineup. It was a Rampage lineup, but I would state that. I mean, what is your theory, Wade? Because Battle of the Belts, by its standards, also did really well. Like, what was the magic formula that led to this on Friday night?
I have no clue, dude. I really don't. I mean, maybe it's Julia Hart, or maybe it's Anna Jay. Anna Jay's taking credit for it because she tweeted something about the last time Rampage did some record highs. She was also the main event. Maybe it's that. I really don't know. I really love to see that tested a third time and see if those ratings correlate. I personally don't know if I heard much coming off of this particular show about the buzz. I heard the wrestling was good, but was there anything that, like, leading into the show, I suppose, is most important? Was there really anything that was that much buzzed about heading into it? I didn't really hear it, but I can't tell you, John. I can't.
Well, Battle of the Belts did 415,000 viewers, so retaining a pretty good amount of the Rampage audience and a 0.14 in the demo. So they were 12th for the night among cable originals. It beat the last two Battle of the Belts. So the ones in October and January, it was ahead of, just behind the one from last August. What was really interesting in Brandon Thurston's breakdown was that in the 18-34 audience, zero drop-off from Rampage. Like every other demo, like there was like a natural like decline from the hour previous, but 18-34, identical identical from one to the other. So, man, that audience, they were there on a Friday night to watch their 2 hours of professional wrestling. They wanted to see QT Marshall and Powerhouse Hobbs going for these ROH tag titles in the main event. But yeah, it was great wrestling for 2 hours, I would say, and a lively crowd. It was not a huge crowd by AEW standards, but they were pretty lively for things. And honestly, this is 1 week. You don't want to put too much into this, but the idea of them, like, you're hearing all the rumors about a Saturday night show. It's does it make more sense to do 2 hours on Friday if you can hold an audience like this for 2 hours?
How often has this happened, though?
Well, that's the thing. You can't go off of just this 1 week. But I was very surprised that this performed well because there was very little buzz for either of these shows going in. But yeah, something obviously clicked, and they did better than I expected them to do. And our last bit of news here, just looking at what is coming up this week. NXT Tuesday night has a 4-way to set up Carmelo Hayes' next challenger. Dragon Lee and JD McDonough announced for that one. Elba Fire and Isla Dawn defend the women's tag titles against Fallon Henley and Kiana James. And Ilya Dragunov against Von Wagner. This is what it's all come down to. If Von Wagner loses, Robert Stone will drop him as a client. Stakes.
Man. Well, then what's Robert Stone going to do?
He's going to have to find a new client. I don't know who he's going to find. He's gone through quite a few on NXT. Wednesday's Dynamite has Chris Jericho against Keith Lee, Swerve Strickland against Darby Allin. John Moxley and Claudio are going to murder Brandon Cutler and Michael Nakazawa, and Orange Cassidy takes on Buddy Matthews for the international title. And Dax Harwood has confirmed that FTR has re-signed with AEW, while Tom Hannafan has re-signed with Impact Wrestling. A great re-signing by Impact Wrestling. Tom Hannafan, very, very good play-by-play announcer. So there you go. You're all caught up on the news.
Thank you for that, John. Very informative.
I would think that we have answered everyone's questions, but if there are more questions, what is the best place for people to submit them for Tuesday night?
We have our latest edition of Ask Away, which is our monthly patron mailbag coming out tomorrow in the Post Wrestling Cafe and also video.postwrestling.com. The best place to submit a question is if you are a Post Wrestling Cafe Patreon patron, go to forum.postwrestling.com. But otherwise, we suggest anybody who might be listening to this. We actually have a lot of questions already, John. I almost don't even want to publicize this, but last call, okay? Very, very last call. If you want to leave a voicemail question, we will try to make time for all of those. Memo.fm/postwrestling. We are taking now voicemail questions for Ask Away. Again, our monthly mailbag available at postwrestlingcafe.com and video.postwrestling.com sometime tomorrow.
Yeah, if there's too many questions, I'm going to have company down here for Ask Away. So be warned. All right. Just for members of the Post Wrestling Cafe, of course, $6 a month gives you access to our entire archive, multiple bonus shows per week. In addition to Ask Away that drops Tuesday, we will be back Friday night with Rewind to SmackDown. And due to the NBA schedule, there is a chance that Rampage will be delayed on Friday night, and the following week, it's being moved to Saturday night. So at least for the next 2 weeks, we're going live at 10 Eastern. I know people want to hear us go through Rampage, but for the next 2 weeks, we're going live at 10 Eastern for Post Wrestling Cafe members. I'm not apologizing. I thought Friday was it was wonderful.
Yeah, it's like 4 weeks. We have some. I mean, it's not entirely our fault, honestly. Like, there's just been one thing after another that's delayed the show, or it's Supercard or something else. It's gonna be like a whole month of us not watching the show. But hey, we'll maybe we'll come back in 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Access on the Post Wrestling Cafe, and also for Cafe members next week on Monday, early Monday, John Cena and I will have a review of Impact Rebellion. Ceno's going to watch the pay-per-view. I will be attending it. I might be in a wheelchair, but I will be attending it on Sunday night at the Rebel Complex in Toronto. Last question, have you seen the trailer for the new Trey Miguel edition of Diary?
I have not. No.
Oh man, they used Underworld for it.
What? Really?
Oh, dude, they got their hands on music for this trailer. George Barbosa, he's running stuff over there.
Oh my goodness.
It looks really good. Nice. It looks really good. I'm sure that's a very good one. So,
all those diaries have been excellent. So shout out George and the great work his team are doing over there.
And we move on to our great work that we're about to drop here, reviewing Raw from the Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, Washington, a venue that AEW ran not too long ago. But again, as we mentioned, bunch of travel issues affecting the show, which Corey Graves did note off the top that they were hit by. So if you were paying close attention, I would say the major names that stood out to me were Rollins, Belair, The Miz, no Johnny Gargano, and for that matter, Candice LeRae, Austin Theory, Omos, MVP, Street Profits. So not confirmed that they all had travel issues, but they at least were not on the show tonight. So I would imagine at least several of those probably affected, which is that's a sizable list right there, as you listed off, that they either were not used on the show or they did not have access to use them on the show. So a lot of people here, they had to put a lot of time in. I think Cody Rhodes had like a 20-minute promo. We had Ray and Dominic out there, which between the promo and the match, that took up a good chunk of the first hour.
Could you imagine this took place last week with the commercial-free first hour? I wonder how that would have affected things.
Well, that's why you run Raw in the host city that you've been in all weekend, and you avoid any travel woes. But yeah, now we're on the road. There, it was funny because when they did WrestleMania in Seattle, and they did a terrible number of buys, especially at that period, and so they never went back to Safeco Field. And at one time, the story was Seattle, and they had like this issue with Seattle. So I don't think Seattle endeared them this time either.
Maybe the key is to drive to Seattle.
Yeah. So we start off with Rey Mysterio coming out in his LWO shirt, and he's going over his crazy year that he's had. But then Dominic interrupts. And Dominic, listen, I have talked about this guy. I think he's been a great character. He had a rough night on the mic here. He comes out, keep your name out of your mouth. Not off to a great start.
Well, listen, it's his dad. Come on, he's flustered here.
This man never gets flustered. That's part of the charm. Ray, you just make things about yourself. You never cared about me. I'm with my real family. And he blames Bad Bunny for losing the match at WrestleMania. And they replay the angle from last week. And he hopes that Bad Bunny learned his lesson and, quote, sticks his nose out of the Judgment Day's business. Ray says he hopes that he sticks his nose out of the Judgment Day's business, which,
well, if your nose is
technically could be accurate. If
your nose is stuck in already, then you would want to
stick your nose
stick it
out of it. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Be like removing your nose from Judgment Day's business. You're not sticking your nose out. Okay. Maybe I'm being nitpicky here. So Ray has been on the phone with Bad Bunny, and he's coming back, and they will regret putting their hands on the musician. So Dominic says empty words from a deadbeat father and tells Ray to man up and that he's a lost cause. And Ray issues a challenge to Dominic. I've got to say, after all of this, I will never fight my son. Dude, Ray can't wait to drop hands with this guy weekly.
Again, once the seal is broken, I mean, listen, you're already a man who beats his son. You know, you can't be a man who, I don't know, really beats his son, I guess. Once you have that label, it's on you forever. So Ray has nothing to lose at this point.
Dominic won't fight his own father, but he knows who will. Finn Balor. I was like, are you kidding me? I don't care how many travel woes there are. You're making this guy wrestle after this last month that this guy's had grade 2 calf tear, 14 staples in his head, and he's got to come out here and work 14 minutes with Rey Mysterio.
Hey, man,
this dude is the MVP of the company.
We have a very thin roster tonight, and if that means that the guy with 14 staples in his head has to go, then I guess so. I mean, he must have been cleared, and I must have quite the recovery and rehab regimen to be able to pull something like this off. He wrestled for how long here? Well, like 20 minutes.
This was 14 minutes.
Yeah, crazy. I know.
Yeah, thin roster. They were also promoting throughout the night tickets going on sale for SummerSlam. The pre-sale is Wednesday, and then the general on sale is Friday. So that's a very interesting one at Ford Field of what the response is going to be like. I imagine that's going to be a pretty hot ticket. It like WWE, it's like the post-Mania, just looking at some of these events coming up, like they are selling a lot of tickets to shows. That Toronto SmackDown is not till August. And they've sold like 9,000 tickets already for that. And that's pretty common in a lot of these places. So I imagine there's going to be a very, very heavy demand for SummerSlam this year. And there we have the featured performers.
What do you think of the new logo?
It's obviously catering very much to the Motor City. It's
And the Lions colors, I believe, right?
That's right. Yeah. So tying it in much like they're doing next year with WrestleMania in Philadelphia. So
Mhm.
wouldn't buy anything with this logo on it, but
No.
can't say I speak for everyone though. What do you
You
think?
can expect most of these names to be on that show, I would say. And for people that are just listening, Belair, Cody, Rhea, Brock, Charlotte, Roman, Ray, but they change these out like all the time. So
Rey Mysterio and Finn Balor. We had a great moment here where Balor is stomping down Ray and Dominic yells, "Attaboy, Finn! Attaboy." Have you ever said attaboy?
I haven't.
No.
No.
Okay. Well, it comes with age, I guess. After the break, Ray comes back. He's constantly going for the 619. He gets interrupted. Balor hits a clothesline, shotgun dropkick, but then Ray stops the coup de grace and hits a top rope Hurricane Rana onto Balor. Finally hits the 619, and as he goes for the frog splash, lands on Balor's knees, and Dominic has a chain. And Ray stops him, decks Dominic, hits a dive onto both Balor and Dominic, and the crowd's pretty hot here. And then Balor distracts the referee, so Dominic gets the chain and he bashes Ray, and this leads to Ray being pulled into the center for the coup de grace in 13 minutes and 47 seconds as Finn Balor gets the victory. And looked great for the time that he had here. You would not think that this man was being held together by staples and God knows what tape over the last month.
Yeah, not at all. So I mean, again, they won't let him out there unless he was medically cleared, and so he's got to be pretty tough because I can't imagine even walking around with those injuries. But wrestled a match here and did all his travel, so good for him. Good for Finn Balor. Not so good for Ray. This is like 2 weeks in a row he's lost on Raw thanks to his son. So,
and another one that we failed to point out: no Damian Priest on this show either.
Mhm.
And would have if you're going towards the tag, it kind of would have made more sense for Damian Priest to be in this role and pinning Ray.
Yeah, sure. If it was a tag and Ray would have teamed with who?
Ray and Bad Bunny. I'm saying if you're building to the Backlash tag match,
Yes,
you could have done Damian Priest against Ray here instead of
Right.
Balor. So
I guess like Balor can't necessarily afford a loss too. He just lost as the Demon. I mean, it's interesting matchmaking, the fact that they even went here. But Ray at this point is at a point where he can lose as many times as he wants, and it doesn't necessarily affect him. I do think there might be a limit, though, because they're treating this match like it's the main event of this Backlash show, and I think
it should be the main event of Backlash.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like you have this and Cody against Brock Lesnar, and that looks to be your 1-2. And based on how tonight goes, probably the 6-man with the Usos and Solo against Owens, Zayn, and Riddle. And that's kind of like your big matches that you need. Like you don't need too much more depth. Like Roman's not expected to be on the show. Yeah. So
but this is a rare case where like having a celebrity attached to a hot feud like this one feels as big as a championship match, from a mainstream level. So I like the fact that Backlash, they can come back without a championship match. It lets that sort of a whole division kind of basically breathe a little bit and shows that you don't necessarily need a championship for a main event.
Earlier today, Otis and Gable are being interviewed by Kathy Kelly, and Maxine interrupts, insulting Gable, but then they hear a scream and everyone runs and finds Lita attacked in the back, and Raquel and Liv Morgan are standing over her, explaining they heard Lita and came to check on her. Trish and Becky show up, and this is our explanation to have Lita removed from the tag title match earlier. So Saxton interviews Becky Lynch, who states that Lita has been taken to a local medical facility. Yeah. And
2 weeks in a row.
That's right. Of local medical facilities. And we should have stated off the top, no Vince McMahon at tonight's show. So that is worth noting. Becky has her suspicions on who attacked Lita. And when she finds out for sure, she will slap their head off, and promised a title match tonight. So her new partner will be Trish Stratus, who will be a surrogate tag team champion for tonight.
Yeah, that's allowed. Freebird rule: you hang out long enough with somebody, they're allowed to tag in.
They have done this over the last year, so you can. They go to Becky and Trish against Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan for the women's tag titles. So this match, first of all, I assume that Raquel is dealing with some kind of back injury because she had the cut marks all over her back. So looks like she is working through something at the moment.
It's not necessarily indicative of something serious, you know, like some people might just get it just for relaxation. But because of the cosmetic nature of like that sort of procedure, you would think that maybe they need it a lot, but I obviously it's not preventing her from wrestling.
I always assume when Yuji Nagata was getting it like 3/4 of the way into the G1, he wasn't doing it for relaxation purposes.
We got to get you in.
I would do it. I would absolutely do it.
Yeah.
Way once got this done, and he sent me the photos of his back, and it looks so gross, but I would absolutely try it. It seems fun. Have you ever done it since, or just the one time?
No, not really. I didn't do a whole lot for me, to be honest.
My
brother's obsessed. My brother will do it for you.
Okay, I just want to do it for the gram. That's it. That's all. I just want some clout. Okay, so this match, if the story of the match was as Graves described it, like Becky and Trish, they're teaming for the first time, or like first time in a 2-on-2 setting, excluding the WrestleMania 6-woman tag, that they had some communication issues. Well, then they told a brilliant story because they seem to be on different pages, and like I thought like there were multiple spots in this where it just seemed like deers in headlights during this match. Like I just thought it was very, very glaring. So Trish gets a tag at one point, and she does the head scissors off the corner and goes for the cover, not remembering that she had just tagged Becky, who is the legal woman. So she awkwardly gets up, pulls in I believe it's Raquel here, and then Becky just follows with the leg drop. Raquel and Becky are then in, and they attempt a double team superplex, which is stopped. And Raquel goes for a power bomb that Trish turns into a Hurricane Rana off of the top. And Raquel then launches everyone with the Tower of Doom. The funny part about this is the one who took it the worst was Liv, who was at the top, who took the superplex portion from her partner, throwing them. So Becky and Raquel then go into the corner. And this was, I had to rewind this 3 times to try and understand what they were trying to do, and Corey Graves trying to interpret what they were trying to do. So Corey is explaining that Becky is going for Diamond Dust onto Raquel, but then Trish gets in the way of their spot, and they just cite communication issues that they're having. And then Trish has to get out of the way. And then I guess the idea was Becky delivering Diamond Dust, but the way it was done, it was all Raquel throwing Becky, drops her onto Liv. So it looks like Raquel is just killing her partner here. And then, so Raquel takes a powder to the floor. This is just a mess. And Becky has this look on her face like, what is going on here? She just looks so defeated in this match. Raquel stops the disarmer. There's a stratisfaction to Raquel, and then the double knees by Liv, and Becky turns the Oblivion into the manhandle slam. Raquel yanks Becky off, and then Trish misses the chick kick, allowing Liv to roll her up for the pin in 15 minutes and 26 seconds. Before we get to the angle, bad match.
Yeah, it was not great. And I thought Trish and Becky at WrestleMania looked pretty decent, you know, in the match that they had. But this one, there were certainly miscommunication issues, and maybe that's why what happened afterwards happened. You know, you made me have a really bad match. Yeah, you made me have a really bad match. So I'm not happy about that. I'm gonna do something.
Well,
but this was not great.
The turn, you've got Becky and Trish kind of like, you know, consoling one another, and then Becky turns and Trish goes for a chick kick, which didn't hit this one too well either, but then followed up with the Trish attacks her with like this weak shot from behind, and then follows up with a chick kick that lands.
The chick kick looked fine. It was the shot.
It was the
initial
first shot.
Didn't look great.
That was the one that was off. The chick kick looked fine. The silver lining here, 9 times out of 10 with WWE audiences, when you do a turn, they cheer, and it's one more time. They got boos for Trish, which I would not have said would be a guarantee that the audiences love to see turns, and they did not get that here. So that was, I'm trying to give the silver lining here, but yeah, this was, I just thought this match was really bad. And the turn after, at least this was the most notable thing I would say on the show, this and the Cody segment. You did get a turn with Trish. But But yeah, hopefully they move on from this. This was not the best setup for all of this.
Not a great tag team match. I still have hope though for the program with these two. I mean, a professional wrestling angle is not just necessarily the in-ring. They have to stick the landing for the in-ring. And you know, you would think that this might end up at a pay-per-view where they would have a bit more time to prepare for the match itself. But I'm interested to see what Trish Stratus can offer as a heel now. It's been such a long time, and when she did it, she was fantastic at it. Now, with all the years of just, I guess, I don't know, wisdom and potentially maybe, like, we see guys come back, and even though their bodies, like, I'm sure it's a lot more difficult to keep up, their ability to act is oftentimes better, you know, and their promo ability is oftentimes better. Trish as a babyface thus far, we really haven't seen anything from her. She's pretty much just kind of been like a silent third, you know, personality without
probably by design. I'm sure that's going to come out like that. It was like overtly trying to make her the third wheel in this whole lead up. I think she's going to be excellent in this hero role. I think it's a good program for Becky Lynch and possible for Backlash that you would think.
Yeah. And you know, right now in the women's division, there aren't exactly a whole lot of people, you know, that you can maybe consider as a viable headlining opponent for Becky Lynch. So maybe you have to go. Maybe it's Saudi. You know,
it could be. I thought of that too. The idea, like, it's the big women's match for Saudi Arabia. As well.
And so what of Lita?
Well, Lita's got to be back here in some form or fashion, although they got the tag titles off her in a unique way here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not disappointed that they don't need to be using Lita in the ring for this angle, nor do you have any reason to have to do it. I mean, everyone could see kind of where her limitations were in that 6-man tag, 6-woman tag. But I think just for the story, you need to have Lita's presence. It would be pretty awkward. And you have this mystery of who attacked her as well. That, I mean, whether it turns out to be Trish or...
of course it's Trish. Like, could it be anybody else?
Well, how did Lita not see that then? How did Raquel and Liv not see?
She could be attacked from behind.
I guess so. And then what?
This is why she
left and found Becky, and Becky didn't notice that Trish was gone for 10 minutes.
So let's think about Trish's motivation. Okay, so let's say she attacked Lita, and then she deduced that, okay, Becky's going to pick
got into the match, and I'm going to botch all the spots, and we're going to lose the tag titles.
Clearly, she wanted to win the tag titles. Now, if she won the tag titles, would she have just given them back to Lita, or would she have campaigned to be the rightful champion herself? What was the thinking there?
I think that would have been a cool twist, is that if Trish does like the lion's share of the work in this match, gets the pin, and then next week she has to give the title back to Lita, and you can see like the simmering jealousy of Trish. But I'm sure they have this pretty mapped out in terms of when Trish came back, of where they're going with
so this. Maybe it's not Trish who did the attack. Maybe it was somebody else who did the attack that Trish will end up partnering with.
It could be. Yeah. It could be someone else.
Yeah, we'll see.
Kathy Kelly is with Paul Heyman, who is asked, do you have any insight about Brock Lesnar attacking Cody Rhodes? He says, do I have any insight? Yes, I do. But then he moves on to Sikoa and Owens, and he mentions Riddle.
He gave like a very, you know, like Nick Khan type of answer here. You know, started talking a lot of words, and then just basically changed course and gave you.
Don't answer the question you were asked. Answer the question you wish you were asked. Mm-hmm. So his question is that he wants to ask is about Sikoa and Owens tonight, mentioning Zayn and Riddle are not here. So Owens is all by himself. He's not as bright as the others. And Owens has one leg after the attack on SmackDown, and they will solve the Kevin Owens problem. The problem solving continues.
Yep.
Saxton goes to ask Trish why she attacked Becky Lynch, and she just brushes past him and leaves. Dakota Kai and Io Sky are outside of Adam Pearce's office. Bayley is back and comes out of Adam Pearce's office stating that she told Adam Pearce that Damage Control wants to stay together with the draft, and that Bayley got a triple threat match with herself against Michin and Piper Niven, where the winner will be in line for a women's title shot. So Dakota and Io ask, what about us? So Bayley goes back into Adam Pearce's office and essentially gets Io Sky the spot instead of her. So we are starting to really ramp up the dissension between Bayley and the other two.
And Bayley realizing that these two aren't necessarily just here to be her support. I'm sure, you know, individually promises were made that she's never really lived up to. So I'm I like that. Finally, we're getting some characterization for Dakota and Io here, even though it was pretty minimal. But at least, this month looks to be focused on Io.
Yeah, and it certainly brings up the question, if you like Bailey in this role, the idea of some call-ups that she gets, I would be fine with Io moving on at this point. I don't know what the long term would be for Dakota Kai without this group to be attached to, but we will see. Bobby Lashley and Bronson Reed. We were back to Bobby Lashley's old entrance where he's on the riser as he comes out. So that is back. The Andre Trophy is ringside. So we still have that. Of all the travel woes, they got this trophy to Seattle.
Trophy gets on the truck, I imagine, not a plane.
No,
so.
this thing gets at least a coach seat, I'm sure. They strap it in. Yep. So they had like a pretty fun big man match here. It was Bronson Reed taking a ton of this match. He is dominating when Lashley fires back and he's trying for a vertical suplex, finally hits it for a big pop, and he goes for the hurt lock, but can't lock the fingers. So Reed just falls back onto Lashley. He just like Nesty plunges to break out of it. Reed then climbs, but Lashley is up. Reed gouges the eye and then hits an avalanche off the top, stops a spear with a knee to Lashley, and then Lashley catches him, slams him, and gets the hurt lock, but Reed tumbles with Lashley to the floor. They continue to brawl. Lashley is posted, and then they are counted out in 10 minutes and 31 seconds. The officials run down. Corey Graves is calling for the police, and then there's a huge roar as Bobby Lashley breaks free, going after Bronson Reed. So I enjoyed this for the 10 minutes or so that they had, and I guess we'll continue this. Sad, though, on a show where we're getting father versus son, we're also getting uncle versus nephew.
What?
Remember last week, Bronson said, "You're my uncle. And one day I will teach." Remember they were stating when Lashley challenged him, he said, in due time. Well, I guess when you have a card to rearrange, due time became a week.
And this was one of those matches where I wondered if how quickly it might have come together, because the match itself was fun, just big men slapping meat, of course. But the finish I thought was just so incredibly lame. And
yeah, obviously they did not want to do a finish, and they are pretty. Like, they'll do plenty of run-ins and such leading to finishes, but in terms of outright DQs and countouts, like, that is something you can definitely see in the Paul Levesque era. They have toned down on a lot.
Yeah, and they were hoping the action was enough to maybe satisfy an audience and to build to something later on. It just never is a great feeling when you have to rely on something like that for a show, but there were extenuating circumstances here.
Cody Rhodes comes out. He is still holding the ribs. Very strong reaction for Cody, and he talks about all the things he has been talking about since he came back: Seth Rollins, his torn pec, the Rumble, WrestleMania, and finishing the story. Well, under the bright lights, I lost in the main event of WrestleMania. And I've heard a lot of people complain and place blame. All the blame should be put on me. I didn't calculate the lengths that Roman would go to. I lost, and I'm sorry. And he mentions his friend Matt telling him that headlining WrestleMania is already a win, and asked Cody, do wins and losses even matter? Cody says, absolutely they matter. We're prize fighters. The only ones who state that wins and losses don't matter are Hall of Famers who have already written their stories. The only question is, which friend Matt was this? This was Jackson.
Let's think about this.
Cardona.
Yeah. Hardy.
Probably not Hardy, I'm guessing.
Matt.
Those would be anyone we're omitting.
There are a lot of Matts out there in the world.
Maybe it was
Matt
Hughes.
Is he friends?
Probably not.
Well, yeah.
He says one of the other things that bothered him was Paul Heyman stating Cody needs to earn a rematch. And he goes on this big speech about his career going from dashing to Stardust, from the undercard to EVP, to being a derelict wolf that followed the pack and returning to lead the pack. Earn it. I am it. And he was embarrassed at WrestleMania, laying in front of a stadium full of people next to a rubber chicken.
Yeah, which is true, actually.
Yes.
Somebody threw a rubber chicken in. And
this was
spread on the internet.
Big meme last week. So he then brings up Brock Lesnar. Tell me why. Why did he attack me like that? and he heard on SmackDown that Brock Lesnar was unhappy with his spot at WrestleMania. His theory is that Brock is uncertain about Cody and all of the hype and the change that could directly affect Brock that Cody represents. He waited until my back was turned, and then Cody goes over all the different of Brock winning the NCAA championship in 2000. Then he goes to say winning the UFC, and you figured he just forgot which weight class he was in maybe, and he just moved on. He's like winning the undisputed title, and then said when he looked at John Cena, he saw a victim. Randy Couture, a victim. The Undertaker, a victim. What do you see when you look at me? And Cody admits, I am scared of Brock Lesnar, but I still want to fight him. And for the first time, when Brock looks in the mirror, he won't see a predator. He will see prey. You will see a victim, Brock, my victim. And we can fight any place, anytime. And Brock isn't here in Seattle, which instantly the whole crowd boos. So he challenges him to WrestleMania Backlash, as their marketing department probably had a heart attack here, and tells him, answer the call. Mm-hmm. And there we go. For all, to our knowledge, it is not WrestleMania Backlash, but hey, he was on a roll here.
To him, he wants this to feel like his WrestleMania. He wants a do-over, okay?
Start the story.
Start the story. I appreciate the fact that he at least addressed the loss in a more substantial way. The pivot to the Brock program, I mean, it was good. Like, Cody cuts good promos, and in the WWE, that's especially the case. I don't think this was at all like. I don't have really anything to criticize this for. You know, I can criticize promo. I can criticize the program. I really wish this was for a championship. I feel like I'd find so much more importance if this was a guy defending a championship. Instead, it feels like, you know, he's fighting for a runner-up. I guess, you know, consolation prize of some value. But Cody does good jobs. You know, like he does a good job of making you care. Was it enough here for Brock Lesnar? Without knowing Brock's reasoning for attacking, I don't know if it's gotten that personal yet. Like, I don't know if he's had that much substance. Because he's basically just having to say, I challenge you to a match, even though I don't know why you specifically attacked me. I guess he's assuming what, because Brock wasn't happy about his spot?
Cody's rebuttal should be, I helped launch a company giving you leverage that isn't the UFC. You should be thanking me.
You think an AEW would spend Brock Lesnar money to get Brock? Maybe, right?
You can't say
Tony
no.
Khan has said he's interested in Goldberg, at least.
I don't think Tony Khan is going to say he's not interested in anyone. I would. There was a time that I think a Lesnar would have been something. I don't know if now is that time. But I mean, when you're booking 90,000 seat stadiums, you're going to look at stuff like that. Yeah. They go over Logan Paul signing his new deal, and then the Usos versus Chad Gable and Otis, which turned into a hell of a match. So they build up to Otis receiving the hot tag, and he's hitting World's Strongest Slams to both Usos. Then he tears his shirt off and hits the Caterpillar, and then hoists up Jimmy as Gable and Otis hit the Steinerizer, which desperately needs a new name. The Usos then land dives onto Otis. There's a double super kick onto the desk. Gable with the Orihara moonsault onto both Usos, and then a diving headbutt. Dude, Chad Gable was on fire here. Great reaction for this near fall off the headbutt. The Chaos Theory gets blocked, and then Jimmy rolls out of the ankle lock. Doesn't see the tag to Jay as the Chaos Theory gets stopped. Double super kick, 1D, and Jay pins Gable in 13 minutes and 6 seconds. But man, Gable was the real star of this, but the Usos were... you know, this was a really fun match by the final couple of minutes.
I thought they made Otis really strong too. You know, they were basically positioning the match where both Usos needed to pair up in order to take down Otis. And it was another unique bit of matchmaking that I wondered if this was always the plan, because the Usos are coming off of the longest tag team title reign, I believe, in history. And Alpha Academy are currently involved in a storyline with the maximum male models. So I don't know if like on paper you would have expected these two teams to, be so 50-50 and for the Usos in particular to sell so much for an Otis or a Chad Gable. But you got that sort of match and you had the announcers basically kind of tell a story of like, hey, like are the Usos losing their confidence after losing the championships? Can they regain the confidence against this team? And it all worked out really well. And by the end of it, you had a great match that I think really helped Alpha Academy and I think helped the Usos rather than just a big squash victory that they could have had. It felt like a significant battle that really changed their momentum.
Io Sky, Michin, and Piper Niven. Corey Graves basically says that since Michin has come back, hasn't gotten to any of her goals yet. Was being very polite here. Michin hit a dive onto Niven, and then Sky followed with an Asai moonsault. After the break, we saw a code red by Michin, and Graves goes to state an ode to. I was like, oh my God, are we going to get an Amazing Red reference? An ode to Pop Rocks by Roxanne Perez.
It's not the first time we've seen that move here, and I don't know why you wouldn't just mention Amazing Red.
Yeah, I don't know if Michael Cole's vocabulary is or his wrestling knowledge is going to be flexed quite as often.
You think Wikipedia might be banned on his iPad now?
Oh, I think so. I think so.
Oh.
Just imagine that first time.
Yeah.
Guess who's back?
None of that Reseda stuff like would have made it, eh?
No, I don't think Asuka's origin story. I don't know how much of that would be working itself in there. El Generico, shout out. Eat Defeat is hit onto Niven, and then Sky hits over the moonsault onto both women, pins Michin in 8:17. Dakota Kai is celebrating with Io. Bayley looking much more subdued here, watching her opportunity go up in smoke as Io Sky. Did they outright state that the winner of this gets a title shot or would be considered for a title shot?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's the Raw Women's Championship #1 contenders match. So Io.
Bianca and Io Sky. That's
I like it a lot. Io
for television.
Io has really been fantastic. I think like a step above, the people that she's been working with, including Becky Lynch. And so at the very least, I think you want to show the audience that she is capable of performing in this sort of position. Bianca Belair doesn't exactly have the biggest roster of, opponents to choose from right now, but what you can guarantee with an Io Sky and a Bianca Belair is that the match is probably going to be pretty damn great. So on a pay-per-view, I think that's as valuable as, really anything. I just hope that they can use this time to really build some character and build some story with her. And clearly they're doing that with what's going on with her and Bayley. Bayley throughout the match was just kind of like playing friend who's happy, but not really happy. So I hope to see that story driven up.
Saxton interviews Kevin Owens, who explains he is not a wise man, but he has street smarts. He leads with his emotions, and his heart tells him to beat up Solo Sikoa tonight. He doesn't have Zayn or Riddle. His knee is not 100%, and he can't hide that from them. And then gets Saxton to read his shirt. Next week on the show, in North Little Rock, Arkansas, Brock Lesnar will show up to answer Cody's challenge. And the main event, it is Solo Sikoa with the Usos in his corner against Kevin Owens. And Sikoa goes after the knee for a long period of time. Owens fights back, goes for the cannonball. His leg gives out. Then he hits the frog splash, but injures his knee on the landing. The stunner gets stopped and is met with a Samoan drop. Owens then gets tossed off the top. Jay distracts, and Jimmy gets fought off by Owens on the edge, then snaps Solo's throat on the top rope, super kicking Jay. So it is Owens fighting all three at once. Owens goes for the swanton, but Solo kicks out. The pop-up is hit, but Solo staggers up to his feet, goes for the stunner as Jimmy once again distracts the referee. Jay nails Owens from the floor, and a super kick and Samoan spike combo by Solo win the match for him in 13 minutes and 33 seconds. But the headline, Corey Graves states, Solo Sikoa has solved the Kevin Owens problem. It was declared. The problem is solved.
It's official.
This was the emphatic win.
This was okay. So what? Just one victory, I guess, is enough.
I mean, he beat Zayn on Friday. He beat Owens tonight. We're done, right?
Problem solved. Yeah. Don't need the championships, really. Just need a pinfall. That's it.
No. No, they're not problems anymore.
Yeah. Oh, whatever. I don't know. I think the story is going to continue, John. Really strong underdog fight from Owens here, I thought. Good selling of the knee throughout, and it made Owens look pretty strong, fighting off 3 guys in the bloodline here. And of course, setting up this big return by the end.
The Usos continue to stomp Owens when Zayn and Riddle sprint into the arena, and they even it up as they come out. There's an exploder to Jay. Jimmy prevents the haluva kick to Jay, so then Owens stuns Jimmy. Zayn goes again for the haluva kick, and Solo saves Jay by pulling him out of the ring, and we have the standoff as the show ends, likely leading to a 6-man tag, you would think, at Backlash between these 6. And that was the show, one that I think was, pardon the pun, riddled with absences on the show. I can't say this was a Raw of extreme consequence. I think you could boil it down to a turn by Trish, Cody setting up the match with Brock, and the rest, it was sort of just patching a show together to get 3 hours in. Some good wrestling on the show, so that was a positive. But I can't say this was a stellar Raw just in terms of knowing how many people were apparently absent and just seemed to be a show that you were trying to fill time at different parts.
Yeah, I would say it's a Raw that I can't help but grade on a curve. Like, considering who they were down by, I think the show probably turned out better than I could have expected. But yeah, if you're watching it without maybe knowing a lot of those details, it's a show that felt like it was missing a full roster. Like it didn't feel like that strong in terms of maybe star power, but you had essentials. This is also maybe contrasted with like WrestleMania season. We're just coming off of like, a season where pretty much all hands were on deck. Everybody shows up. The Raw right after the Raw after WrestleMania, you're basically getting a half roster here. So this one really did stand out, but I think considering they did a pretty good job.
Get ready for the brand split again. Get used to this.
I mean, that means you'll get stars coming from the other side though.
Yeah,
but you're saying half a roster.
You're gonna have half a roster for these shows.
The hope is that you at least have like bigger stars, being there constantly. But yeah, it's not always going to be the case.
So there you have it. Raw in Seattle, Washington. Yeah, I think you have to certainly take into account a lot of the problems that they had for this show. But in terms of Backlash, I mean, you can pretty much see the picture coming together, but a lot of that show, I think, just rests on all the attention that Bad Bunny is going to get. And when you set up that match, like you would, they've got almost a month. So you certainly have your time to set that one up.
He's got to come back and make an attack.
Do you think Bad Bunny's showing up in Arkansas next week?
This is
how we look. Like, what city could you imagine Bad Bunny showing up in? Let's with all due respect to North Little Rock, Arkansas, we look at Chicago in 2 weeks. That could be where you set things up, and then they're in Fort Worth, Texas, before they go to San Juan, Puerto Rico. Yeah, Chicago. I would think you want your all your big matches in set up by Chicago that night.
Sure.
Okay, let's go. We have do you want to read our piece of feedback, Way?
Yeah, we got one piece of feedback here, and this comes to us from Muggin. Thank you, Muggin, for leaving your thoughts. Muggin says, last week's mess got cleaned up significantly here between Cody versus Brock starting in earnest. Trish Stratus' heel turn, the Bloodline's continued issues with Owens and Zayn, and Damage Control's growing dissension, to name a few. Things are a lot more stable because of it, and I liked how the logistical turmoil was worked in organically, with Riddle and Zayn showing up by the end to save KO. Raw bounced back effectively, and may it continue. So Megan thought this was a real bounce back from last week. It was certainly a better show than last week, so maybe we can say that, despite not having a full roster, this was a better Raw than last week's was.
Do you know that last week's Raw was voted on Cage Match as one of the worst shows ever in wrestling history?
I saw the list. I believe it was like
what company it was in.
I think Heroes of Wrestling was ranked lower than it, and one edition of NXT from like the game show days was ranked under the very worst. But I mean,
I think some people need to go and rewatch Heroes of Wrestling before they grade Raw anywhere in the sphere.
I think you at least get a whole lot of value. Like we've reviewed like Heroes of Wrestling something like 3-4 times. Okay,
I'll never in my life am I watching that show ever again. I promise you, I'm never watching that thing again in my life.
You're right, but you'll at least get something if you did out of it, more so than you probably would have last week's Raw. But I think a lot of that was just like people protesting like all the backstage news too, right?
Well, it was a lot more subdued on SmackDown and tonight. No Vince on Friday, no Vince tonight. So that is Vince Watch will still be a thing moving.
And
forward.
no news about when the draft is taking place.
You're right. It was they did recap the announcement by Paul Levesque, but still no announcement of when they do the draft.
Probably not until after Backlash, you would think, right? Or maybe
is that a few short weeks? What constitutes a few short weeks?
This is always interesting, okay? Because like, when does the draft take place, and what's the pay-per-view that might totally screw up as a result of these drafts? Like, they have to be smart about this, because in the past they did their drafts and then they had to go to a pay-per-view the next, like, the end of the week, and you knew everybody was going to be switching brands anyway. So
well, they have about 4 weeks between Backlash and Saudi Arabia. Is it 4 weeks? And then after that, they have all of June. There's no premium live event because July 1st is when they do Money in the Bank in England.
Yeah, well, maybe that's a good.
I mean, you could do it anytime in May, I guess. Yeah. You could do. Or sorry, I should say even if they do, anytime in May.
Just do it whenever. Okay, whatever.
Do it next week. Just announce it like on Twitter.
Announce it an hour before.
Draft tonight. Yeah. Draft.
Sure.
Okay. We are going to get out of here. Again, we are back on Tuesday night with Ask Away, the mailbag show, taking your questions, forum.postwrestling.com. That will be out for all Post Wrestling Cafe members. Dynamite on Wednesday. Thursday, Brandon Thurston and I are interviewing Brandon Ross of Light Shed Partners, a familiar voice on the WWE earnings calls. So a man that always has some great questions on these earnings calls. So he will be joining us to talk about the WWE UFC merger and many other questions coming out of last week's news.
I think at Post Wrestling, this might unofficially be Brandon Week. Here.
It is Brandon Week. Brandon Week. It is on brand.
Because not only do we have Brandon Thurston on, WrestleNomics on Sunday, Pollock and Thurston on Thursday, Brandon Ross also on Pollock and Thurston this week. This Saturday, on a very special edition of Postmarks, we will be featuring an interview that Dave and Bruce did with the one, the only, Brandon from New Jersey. Okay, for those of you who don't know, Postmarks is a show done by Bruce Lord and David Myers that usually appears for free on our Post Wrestling Cafe feed, where they speak to members of the Post Wrestling audience. They have been doing this, I think, for a little over a year now, and these interviews are always really fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to this one in particular because they managed to somehow grab Brandon from New Jersey to sit down and to talk. So that will be available not just on the Post Wrestling Cafe feed, but we'll be putting that right there on the free feed as well for all of you guys to check out. So Postmarks coming up this Saturday, Brandon Week here at Post Wrestling.
If I'm allowed to wear headphones, that's going to be my soundtrack on the CN Tower.
It's going to sound like this.
Goodbye.